So I'm going to talk to you today about writing a literature review. I'm going to also give you some information on different kinds of sources and also a technique that I've used to do lit review that I think is pretty helpful. So in a literature review, this first slide shows you where in the report the literature review goes. So it is generally part of the introduction. So we have the introduction, which tells things like what's the problem, where did it come from, what's the context, what's the background, and the literature review is have other people learned about this particular problem. So looking back to see what other people have learned, and then also looking at the sort of foundational information that you might need to solve the problem. Then we have the body of the report and then conclusions, which is generally the way that all reports are written. So there's going to be three general types of literature, well, kind of two, but it's either books or articles, and there's two types of articles. So the book really has something about the theory of the background, like what have people really published in the area for a long time. And I would just say you don't have to read the whole book. You should flip through it and keep it for references, though, and make sure that there's a kind of two different types of books. One is where the entire book is on the subject. And then in that case, you need to look for the breadth of the subject. Like, what are all the aspects of this particular subject, just to make sure you're covering everything. The second type of book would be that there's a portion, a chapter, or an area, and there would be some sort of general conclusions about that. So a little bit more specific, but it also is it is referencing general theory or published works. The second types of literature are articles, and there's two types of articles. There's foundational articles, which are articles where this particular topic has been mentioned a long time ago, maybe the first time it's mentioned. And you can use things like Web of Knowledge and Web of Science to try to figure out when this particular subject was first encountered. And that's going to be important, especially if you have people on your committee who have a very deep knowledge in this. They probably have in mind some specific historical articles. So I would definitely ask them if they have any foundational articles. The other type of articles is that you want to get things that are new on the subject. What are the new thinkings in this area? What have people been writing about now about it? In all of the literature, it needs to be peer-reviewed, which means that somebody outside of the person who wrote it has said it's good information. So generally, literature from companies is not considered peer review because it's just coming from the company. Also, Wikipedia isn't necessarily peer reviewed. It's getting more and more that way, but it's not really thought of as a complete peer review. Most general websites aren't peer reviewed, blogs or things like that. So you need to be careful about that. You need to have something reputable. It needs to be a particular author and a particular institution that backs it on all of these types of literature. So the first type of literature is books. And I know that sometimes we think this is just old-fashioned and we don't need to really look at what books are. But I think you'll be actually quite amazed at how much information is in our particular library. The library is generally organized by subject. So in a particular area of the library, they're going to have, in fact, there's this one area of the library that has tons and tons of industrial engineering topics in it. And it's just these two shelves, it's completely, well, not two rows, completely full of industrial engineering topics because it's organized by subject. So what that means is that you can go into Polycat and search by a particular keyword and find out where that is. And so this is just a little bit of a snapshot of what I did when I did lean manufacturing, I think is what I got. And you can see that I have here all of these references, and there's actually a lot more. But I could see that TS155 showed up quite a bit. Also this one, I might want to look at Z244, but see there's a couple other TS's here. So what I did is I actually went to that part of the library. So I walked there, it's on the 5th floor. I walked there and I looked at all the books in that row. I didn't really look for that particular book, I looked at the row. And this is just a picture of what I saw in one little part of the row. So there's like Six Sigma, TQM, tools, methods for inventory quality, quality control. So you can see that they're all in this one area. And I would definitely go there and see if you can find books that pertain to the subject that you're interested in. Now, articles. Articles are found by doing searches. I did mention that you could also go ask the, people on your committee for foundational articles. That would be a good thing to do. But you have to start with a keyword search, which sounds really trivial, but it's actually quite challenging to get the right keywords. You might need to read some articles to see what other people are using for keywords in that, and keep refining your keyword searches. And you look for references that you look for, get an article that seems like it's in that area, and then look at the reference section and see if there's anything in that reference, their list of bibliography, their list of reference in that article, to see if there's any significant articles you want to look at. Because if someone wrote an article about a topic that is pretty close to your topic, you might want to see references they used. So that's a really good way to do it. You also can do searching. So Google Scholar is one way to do it. It's easy, it's general. Some of the articles are not accessible, especially if you do it from home. If you do it from Cal Poly, sometimes you can get to them, but sometimes you have to pay. So they're sometimes hard to get to. Our library database, it's organized by subject. It's much more specific and it's more accessible. I actually use both, especially if I'm not particularly, if I'm not clear on what is the general knowledge in the area, I might use Google Scholar. If I'm more specific and I understand what I'm looking for, I might use our databases. So I would do both of those, like go back and forth. The databases are, especially at our library, are by subject or by major actually, and it's a good place to start. And so I would look at industrial engineering, manufacturing engineering, and business. And you can see the databases that they are searching, and you might want to go into those particular databases, or you might just want to stay with that kind of search. One of the good ones I use is Academic Search Elite for industrial engineering topics. Web of Knowledge or Web of Science is also a good source, a good place for source articles, looking at what is the article that sort of started talking about this. And then again, David Beals, who is our librarian, he is a good source of just talking through your problems. He will show you a little bit more about searching, and he also might help you to figure out how to organize what it is you're doing. And then the question often is, when are you done? So there is a such thing as a exhaustive search. You do this when you're writing a dissertation, and most probably for grant proposals, where you actually search everything in that area, and you keep searching and searching until you can't find any more, until you keep repeating yourself. And this is a huge effort. We don't really require that for the thesis, but and so one way to do it is to count the number of references that you have. I don't really like this method, but it is some sort of guideline for you. So generally, when you wrote a paper in school, you had maybe 3 references. For a senior project, I think we say 10 to 15. For a master's project, we expect 20 to 30. So that's kind of the level of references. But I say be careful, because you want to make sure you're covering what other people know as is good information. And again, this has to do with talking to your advisor and making sure that you aren't missing some sort of reference. Okay, so now you have a bunch of references, and this is a technique that I used to create a literature review. And it's kind of because it's hard to hold everything in your mind at the same time. So what I do is I do a few articles at a time. I read them. The first thing I do, I pick up an article and I write on an index card, a 3x5 card. I write a number, so it's the 13th reference that I'm using. The number doesn't really matter, but it's the just so I can reference it later. And then I write the citation of it. And then as I'm reading the articles, I start creating multiple 3x5 cards, and I try to get one fact, idea, or an example with every card. So lots of the cards don't have a lot on it, just very short. And if it's a particular page, I sometimes will write the page on here. So I have all the pages here. But if it's a particular quote, I might want to remember where that is, because you have to include the page number when you're doing the reference. So then I just do this over and over. I do it for all of my articles. So like one article might have 10 to 15 cards with it that are ideas I got from that particular reference. And I do that over and over again, and pretty soon I get a stack of cards. And it's actually quite satisfying to get a huge stack of cards. For my dissertation, my stack was like 6 inches high, but yours doesn't need to be quite that high. And then what you do is you start sorting them, organizing them. Well, is this idea like this idea? And then it's just a matter of like, just getting a little stack with 6 or 7 ideas. Now that's a paragraph. And then you organize the paragraphs together, and then you organize those paragraphs into subjects, and then the subjects become the lit review. You start to write paper, and you create the reference list because you already kept those cards, the cards with the references on it, separate. Just for the references, use either MLA or APA, but do it consistently. There's lots of ways to get the correct formatting, lots of stuff online. I think even Word might do it for you. So you need to really look at formatting and make sure you're doing it right. You can either create a reference list, where this is a numbered reference list in the order of your citation in the paper, or you can create a bibliography, which is all the references used, and these are alphabetized. Most people use references, but bibliography is an option. This is an example of a lit review, and I would just say that some of the things to notice here, we have headings and subheadings, which are really important for organization. And then this is an APA style where we have the name and the date associated with a particular idea. Well, I hope that helped you to see a little bit how to do a lit review, and definitely talk to your advisor about any other issues you have with it, but this is a guideline.